Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Payton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule. Today is Friday, March 28th. The month is almost over, but the transfer portal is just beginning, and the Tigers already have their first commitment in the 2025 transfer class. And Jevon Porter, we're going to get right into it. Recording here on Thursday, so a source confirmed to Mizzou today that Mizzou did indeed receive the commitment of the former father Tolton Catholic forward. So it might be official by the time you're listening to this on Friday. It might be official by the time we're done recording. That's usually what happens when it's just Payton and I. We usually get news or just confirmation officially right when we're done. But getting into it, Payton, I know it's kind of mixed feelings just around the Mizzou community. I know even like mixed feelings from you. Just for you, I mean, just when you saw the news, what kind of just went through your mind?
I mean, look, we kind of went through this last year where everyone thought Jevon Porter was kind of Mizzou bound, and that didn't wind up happening. This time around, I think it was probably a bit more obvious. Pretty much everyone put out that Mizzou was. I don't think I even saw another school linked to Jevon Porter, I'll be honest with you. It's interesting because, for one, Dennis Gates absolutely adores just getting at least one commit within the first few days of the portal opening every year. We saw it 2 years ago with Tanjay, last year with Cruz. Hopefully this one goes a little better than those two at Mizzou. But I'll be honest, I'm not super big on this one. People obviously are going to recognize, I mean, let's address the elephant in the room. It's another Porter, everyone. Another Porter is on his way to Mizzou. Michael and Jontay's little brother, of course. Look, Javon, you kind of look at just the numbers right away that jump out at you. I mean, 12.5 points, 7 rebounds a game. I mean, those are like on the surface. It's like, okay, that's like if you bring like this guy in maybe to be like just kind of reinforcements for your front court. Not a bad deal, but I don't know, man. The efficiency is just not there with him. His 3-point shooting is 32.1 for his career, and that's not on an insignificant amount of attempts. He's taken 4.1 attempts a game for his career. His field goal percentage has dropped every year he's been in college, which I find kind of interesting. Torvik has his true shooting percentage at 49.1. Very high usage rate as well, 24.7. It's just, I think the role has to kind of be very much embraced by Jevon Porter. I don't think you can have Jevon Porter come in and be used nearly as much as he's been on offense. Like probably more than, like you probably want to see his shot attempts cut in half at Mizzou, because the numbers in the West Coast Conference, I'll be honest, they're not that impressive to me. I mean, he's 6'11". He's not gonna be a guy that's gonna come in and play the 5 straight up, like I know a lot of people have been hoping Mizzou could get. He's more of a wing type player. Only 52.9% on close 2-pointers, according to Torvik. Just not that leaves a lot to be desired to me as a guy that has been 6'11" and been in the West Coast Conference for 3 years. I'm willing to maybe see let's be honest, Pepperdine and Loyola Marymount are not coaching clinics, I would say. Nobody's going there to nobody going there would expect to see like some elite offensive performers. Maybe we'll see a bit of an uptick if he has a reduced role, and just maybe a better system fit for him. But I'm skeptical of this one. To put it concretely.
Porter fills the first of 4 spots that Mizzou needed to replace in the transfer portal. It's 15 roster spots. After losing Aidan Shaw to the transfer portal, we'll get to him in a few minutes. You were left with 11 guys returning from this last year, or I guess 9 returners plus 2 guys 2 freshmen, in Aaron Rowe and Nicholas Randall. The thing is, with Jevon Porter, 37% of those shots that he's taken over his career over the last 3 years have been from three. That's another thing too. It's just the efficiency from three is also just hasn't looked as strong. I know that number went up after his sophomore year, moving over to Loyola Marymount. And the reason he did, he entered the transfer portal, was linked to Mizzou last year, but followed his former Pepperdine coach. And I believe it's a family friend too, in Lorenzo Romar, to Loyola Marymount. So now he's going to come back to Mizzou. The connections are abundant, Payton, just like how you mentioned, with his 2 brothers, Michael Porter Jr. and Jontay Porter, and then his sisters, Sierra and Bree, also playing at Mizzou. So it's just like getting another name out there. I know there's a little bit of, baggage just behind the name recently too. And, it's not, we're not going to beat around it, with just, things off the court as well, just within the family. But, coming to Mizzou, kind of a new fresh start for that final year. It's almost just like an opportunity to kind of right the ship just for him to finish out his college career. And I think just with that too, it's just kind of accepting that the role that you're getting from Jevon Porter not necessarily is a thing that you need to be super, asking of. I think some people, when they see that the transfer class, you want a big hitter, you want someone, from the SEC ranks, from the Big Ten ranks that's coming to Mizzou and come in and do that. I don't think you need to ask the world of Jevon Porter. I think you just need to ask for efficiency, ask him to come in and replace that size. So you're losing an Aiden Shaw, which, I think, you didn't really see Aiden Shaw touch the floor much in his junior season, but he's of a similar size and kind of athleticism. He isn't a big guy that's going to turn his back to the paint. He's going to be a guy that can kind of, roam around the arch and also get in on the mid-range action. But 6'11", 235, going to be a senior forward, last year of eligibility. I just don't think you ask for the world from him. I think, you let me know.
No, definitely not. I don't think you can afford to, really. Look, last year I was definitely all aboard Jevon Porter coming to Missouri, because quite frankly, I did not expect Missouri to be able to pull in Mark Mitchell and Tony Perkin type recruits out of the portal after that disaster. But look, the front court absolutely needed reinforcements. I still think Missouri, even with Porter, needs to go out and get a true center. Maybe just that does a little bit of similar, that has similar characteristics to Josh Gray, but maybe can score a little more. But the rest of the front court needed work too. I mean, you're kind of looking at it where after Mark Mitchell, you got Trent Pierce, who took a step forward, but kind of trailed off towards the end of the year. And Jacob Cruz, who I think I've made abundantly clear, I am not the biggest fan of how he plays. That's kind of who they were looking at kind of as that front court for the most part. That's how they've had them play. So Jevon Porter gives a little bit more depth there. Hopefully the reduced role that I would have to assume he sees. I don't think he's going to be a 30-game starter at Missouri like he was at Loyola Marymount. Hopefully that benefits him a lot. Hopefully coming home can be a benefit for him. And hopefully being in we've seen it, a very, very unique offensive system, just free running will benefit Jevon Porter.
Definitely. And I think we'll look back on this too, Payton, once the team is fully set. There's going to be 3 more guys coming in as of right now. That's, anticipating no one else enters the transfer portal. And I think right now, we can say confidently, we're not expecting anyone else right now. Maybe there's some conversations with some freshmen that might go out there. Maybe there's just, there's always going to be tampering. We'll never actually know the official things that are going on. But teams reach out to players. People want certain players on other teams, even if they're not in the portal yet. You see it in football. You see it in a lot of sports. But as of right now, it's filling those 3 spots. And once those 3 spots are filled, maybe we know, what Jevon Porter's, role is. I think we'll be a little bit more confident in what this team will look like. I can maybe say just, right now, Payton, I don't necessarily think he's maybe in that starting rotation next year. And we still don't know who those 3 guys aren't. Yeah. So I think people are kind of just quick to judgment on, what to see from Jevon Porter. We'll see how he meshes, early on in non-conference play before it really ticks up into conference play. But I think you're looking at rebounding. And I think that's one of the biggest things. You lose that in Josh Gray. He's a little bit smaller than Josh Gray, I think by an inch. So, but definitely not the bigger, brute force that Josh Gray was. but it still, brings athleticism to that wing spot, to the 4 spot, just one of the forward positions. And just something to kind of, keep in the back of your mind until this roster is fully set. Then you kind of have a better feel of what maybe to expect from Jevon Porter. Payton, let's talk about departures now. We'll get back to the transfer stuff here in a second, but Aidan Shaw, unsurprisingly, just entered the transfer portal on Tuesday. It was kind of expected that it was going to happen. Out of all the guys on the roster, probably the most anticipated. 3 years at Mizzou. The last guy, Konzo Martin, recruited. He stuck around after Konzo Martin got fired. Decommitted for a little bit, looked around, and came back. And he was big guy under Dennis Gates. I remember. I know this story too, and you've brought it up to me before Aidan Shaw's first game. He was wearing his jersey around the locker room. He couldn't take it off. He was just super excited to be a Missouri Tiger coming over from the KC area. And, it just never really took that step forward, but you've never heard a bad thing about the guy, as a person. And I think that's one thing that will stick around just during Aidan Shaw's tenure, is just him as a person. And, maybe a little bit of a what if, what could have been and what the expectations were. But I think everyone was content with him moving forward. Even Dennis Gates, he said he still loves him and wants him to go out there and find the best spot for himself.
Yeah, Aiden Shaw was kind of, first of all, he was the last guy from Dennis Gates' first team at Mizzou. That team is already completely gone, ancient history now, which is just crazy to think about. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, Aiden Shaw, it was just such an exciting guy to have when he first, because it would have just been, it's no secret, Konzo Martin's recruiting at the end of his time at Mizzou was so not good. So you see this guy who on all these highlight tapes is jumping out of the gym, dunking on people. He's like a consensus top 100 prospect, and he comes to Mizzou. That was the decommitment under Dennis, when Dennis took over, was natural. But I remember just how exciting that recommitment was. I remember we were at Dennis Gates, he did some event in the student center at Mizzou, and someone directly asked him about Aidan Shaw, and Dennis Gates obviously can't comment on specific recruits. And Dennis Gates went, "Who?" When the guy asked, and he said, "Well, I hope I get to tweet out a bat signal." And lo and behold, an hour later, you were on my phone. I remember I was showing you something on my phone, and you were like, "Why did Dennis Gates just tweet a photo of himself?" And that was the Aidan Shaw recommitment. So Aidan Shaw was just always someone that has a fond place in my heart. He just meant it was just such an it represented such an exciting kind of time for the program. That honeymoon period with the new coach, the fun, new, exciting additions. It just didn't ever wind up working out. He never really kind of looked comfortable on the offensive end. He had really a lot of flashes on the defensive side, I think. Just a ferocious perimeter defender his freshman year in particular, I remember. I just really think his sophomore year, where just nothing went right with the team, he never looked it looked like he honestly regressed. It looked like he wasn't confident. I think that really kind of screwed things up for everyone. I was hopeful that this year he could kind of, stay in that rotation, but just got passed up by some guys, not even really by fault of his own. But I really do have nothing bad to say about Aidan Shaw. I really do hope the best for him.
It was even a time during that was our junior year at the University of Missouri. And it's one of those times where you remember the recruits coming in, you remember the Antlers kind of having signs, when the guys would walk out of the tunnel. And, over the years, I think, Josh Christopher was one of the first ones, back in our freshman year. And I remember seeing him come and walk on the court. I think I saw him on a golf cart too, driving around. And so when you have a recruit that comes, and I think Aidan Shaw might've been signed by this point too, or he was just committed, but they had a thing where they kind of gave him a round of applause. I don't know if you remember this, Payton, but they put the spotlight on him at a game when he was visiting. And so it's always big in that
It was
world.
3/4 empty.
Yeah, it was really small. You could see him, we could spot him even before they put the camera on him. But that was just a time where, it is that, honeymoon period. I think you said it perfectly with that. And you see those big recruits come in. And I think, I mentioned this the other day, just with Harper, just with the women's basketball team. I feel like some of those first recruits, no matter what the outcome is, or maybe just how they're performing right now in high school, people are going to be excited. You're always excited about some of those smaller classes or just the first classes. And even going back to Drinkwitz's days, even though that 2021 class really never panned out to be much, it was still, a very hyped time, and everyone loves those first kind of legs of recruiting for a new coach. And we'll look at some other departures now. The walk-on era is probably officially dead now for the Missouri Tigers. Jeremy Sanchez exhausted his eligibility, but with the new roster rules, we're going down to 15 max, and everyone is open to a scholarship. It doesn't look like Mizzou will be carrying any walk-ons this next season, so it's a goodbye to J.V. Brown and Danny Stevens. J.V. Brown did appear in a game earlier this season. Danny Stevens did not appear in a single game over his 2 years with the Tigers. And I remember his freshman year, he was in a little scooter with his leg, so he was injured there. And then he had a hand brace on most of this year, so he just never really had an opportunity to get late into those late action games. But, you kind of wish the best to those guys. Really no opportunity to play at Mizzou, but maybe a mid-major or smaller school will take a shot on them.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember hearing that both Brown and Stevens kind of had lower major opportunities, maybe.
Yeah, look at on the YouTube. I believe it's Danny Stevens might. Yeah, he has a couple offers on here. He had Western Illinois, Eastern Illinois, San Diego, or South Dakota. Yeah, and SEMO were some of those schools.
Yeah, so maybe just kind of being able to just run against high major players in practice every day, maybe that benefits them a bit. Maybe it helps them get picked up somewhere in the portal. It's kind of a shame. I mean, Dennis Gates has always talked about these culture guys. It was a big thing with Ben Sternberg. With Jeremy Sanchez being big culture guys. And that kind of appears to be like they can't do it anymore, just with the way the new scholarship rule works and everything. So Dennis might have to transfer some of that energy to just some student managers or something. I don't know. That's tough. I mean, good luck to J.V. Brown and Danny Stevens. It's a tough break for them.
Yeah, maybe kind of have to build into some of those maybe smaller roles on the staff too. Maybe a GA role, or was Trago Million a GA, or was he just on staff? Because I feel like that's another thing.
I think he was a GA.
Yeah, so he was still a part of it. I remember he was trying to pull Dennis back when Dennis Gates was getting kind of heated there at the end of the season, one of those games, and I think he yelled at Trago Million to go sit down. But I think maybe something in those roles that kind of keeps the end of the bench kind of up and moving. And is it EBGs is one of the biggest things we've kind of heard just from Jack when he covered the team. And then Ben Sternberg, when he's been on with us, just talking about that and some of those walk-on roles and what you actually have a role within the team, and you're not just a guy sitting at the end of the bench that's not going to play. So you do wish the best to them, but it is unfortunate to kind of see the death of that walk-on spot, especially at the high major level. We'll get into the rest of the transfer portal. These long lists on social media is what everyone loves. Who did you see in the tournament? Who did you see leading up to the end of the season in those conference games or conference tournament games that you were excited about that are now in the portal? And is my team in that list? That's always the question, but we have a bunch of names on here, Payton, before we get into this last segment about basketball. We don't have to look at all the numbers, but I'll run through the list. And then you give me you max amount of number if you want. If you want to talk about every single player, Payton, let's talk about every single player. But I'll run through the list just so everyone knows some of these other guys that have been linked to Mizzou that we didn't talk about in that first episode talking about the transfer portal. Marcus Adams Jr., Cal State Northridge, Devin Askew of Long Beach State. I didn't know that their mascot is just the beach, but they are the Dirtbags in baseball. Nick Davidson, Nevada, that's a big one. Paul Djibe, Miami, Isaiah Lohim from USC, Rashid Jones from Coastal Carolina, Nick Pringle, a name that I'm sure Payton wants to talk about from South Carolina, Marquis Strickland from Western Michigan, and Jaden Young from Virginia Tech. Payton, is there a guy you want to start with? Someone you want to talk about?
Well, the one most people I think are gonna most people I think will recognize guys like Nick Pringle, but I do want to quickly highlight Askew, just because he also has a lot of high major experience actually in the past. Former Kentucky guy, he started 20 games there. That's unbelievable. Played a year there, then moved to Texas, then 2 years at Cal, then at Long Beach this past year. I'll be honest, I would steer so far away from someone like Devin Askew, who kind of just put up big numbers on a 7-25 team. I'm good on that. I don't really like the shooting splits are good, but they're almost like too good comparatively to the rest of his career. So,
Mhm.
and look, a lot of this is, and it's been a thing that I think people forget about every year until we get full into transfer season. Dennis Gates and Missouri, that staff, they literally will send you a message if you have a pulse and are in the portal. They talk to everybody. So I wouldn't put too much stock into most of these names. The couple I want to really talk about are Nick Pringle's the biggest one for me. Nick Pringle, this is a guy that was at Wofford to begin his career, but then was on Alabama for 2 years. He was a huge piece of the Alabama team that went to the Final Four just this past season. He was a 32 game starter for South Carolina this year, 9.5 points a game, 6.3 rebounds, an assist. Pretty good from the field, 57%. He's not like a true back to the basket center that I think Josh Gray is, but I think you could honestly live with a little bit of like, I think you could live with a little reduction in rebounds because Nick Pringle would be, I think, just a legitimate offensive threat from the five. And putting that right next to someone like Mark Mitchell, because Gray and Mitchell worked pretty decently together. But at times it really felt like teams would just be like, all right, Gray is not going to score. We're going to just key in on Mitchell. And because he's their only threat down low. I think Nick Pringle kind of can take some of that weight off of Mark Mitchell's shoulders. I think a 3-year guy in the SEC has to be really appealing. I do know Dennis Gates followed him on Instagram. So Nick Pringle is easily the one that excites me the most out of this list personally.
Hey, it was appealing last offseason too with Josh Gray. He had 3 years of SEC experience as well with a couple, or the year at LSU and a couple at South Carolina. Will this just become a trend, Payton? I mean, maybe a joke here, but will it become a trend that Mizzou goes after a center from South Carolina every year?
Boy, we're gonna have to give them one back as well. I mean, we gave up Jordan Butler for Josh Gray last year. I mean, who would we give back this year? I don't know if I'd give up Peyton Marshall for Nick
or Trent
Pringle.
Burns. I don't know if you want to give up either of them.
But no, I hopefully it does not become just a trend. And I know a lot of people are going to go, well, you just talked about how Askew put up big numbers on a bad team. Why would you really think Pringle could change it, considering South Carolina was terrible and he put up maybe kind of just okay numbers? I just think the SEC is a different level for one than the Big West. And I think Nick Pringle, look, we've talked about this with Jack before. Jack covered the team that Nick Pringle was on for Alabama going to the Final Four. He's a huge fan of Nick Pringle. I trust Jack's opinion on this. And I think Nick Pringle is kind of like a perfect type of center for them. Could they shoot a little higher than Nick Pringle? Sure. But I think, and maybe Nick Davidson honestly could be a better option than Nick Pringle to kind of play that 5 role, considering how Dennis Gates likes to play. But Pringle's very intriguing to me. I'll touch on Davidson very quickly. He had a laundry list of teams reach out to him in the portal. 33 game starter at Nevada this past year, 34 game starter the year before on the Nevada team that made the tournament. Decent shooter from 3. Still a good rebounder, but probably not like as good as you'd maybe want from like a big in the SEC, like a true 5. But I think you can live with it because he's very much more of that facilitating type of big that I think Dennis Gates kind of wants. We saw it like with Josh Gray. He tried to have Josh Gray stand at the top of the key and connect the offense at times. I think Nick Davidson is far more capable of doing something like that. 2.8 assists a game this past year. Obviously, there's the question of whether it would translate stepping from the Mountain West to the SEC. But I do think Nick Davidson and Nick Pringle, those are 2 very intriguing big options that Missouri has already been connected to.
Any of those other guys that kind of jumped off the page? If not, I'll just hit on Marcus Adams real quick.
I mean, not Elohim is interesting to me because Elohim was originally, I believe, committed to Arkansas when Musselman was there. Musselman went to USC. Elohim followed him there, and he's already leaving. I'm not really sure what happened with him. At USC was not a very good team. Elohim played in 18 games, 5.7 minutes a game. The numbers look pretty good. Very low because he didn't play much, but good shooting splits. I mean, almost a board in 5 minutes a game. That'd be an interesting one. That'd be an upside play, I think, obviously. But I kind of do. If there's one thing I trust this staff to get right out of the portal for the most part, with the exception of like Kurt Lewis, it's probably like these guards and wing type players.
Yeah, I think it's a guy that has experience in the Big Ten. It also maybe is helpful to get into a new like environment for that second year. Mizzou's done well with second year guys, even in their own, more so in their own system. But it would be interesting to see how that kind of blends well with a guy who's played a couple games in the Big 12 or in the Big 10, and see how that kind of pivots into the SEC play with a new system. I'll hit on Marcus Adams because I found him a little bit intriguing. He's a 6'8" sophomore. At Cal State Northridge, played his freshman season at BYU, but really didn't play much. He kind of had an interesting recruitment. He was a Kansas commit, and I think at one point a Gonzaga commit at the same time before he went to BYU. So he kind of was all over the place. And I heard just some things, maybe just want to be a little bit closer to family out west. He is from California, so Missouri would be a far one to go. But good numbers at Cal State Northridge. Maybe you don't want to buy too much into just that level of play, but 20 starts in 32 games. 52, 40, 74 shooter. Maybe want to see some improved free throw shooting, but 6'8" forwards, 16.1 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. Those are some good numbers. I think that's maybe definitely a guy that they'll keep their eyes on, but he also had a very long list of teams kind of coming after him.
I know I just made fun of the Big West, but I will say there were 3 legit pretty good teams in there in UC Irvine, UC San Diego, and I believe UC Riverside had a very good year as well. So it isn't like, obviously that's not the SEC where every single night this year was a gauntlet, but it's not nothing. He played 3 legitimately very good teams. Cal State Northridge itself was a solid team this year. It would not be a totally. I would not be offended if this was someone they looked into pretty hard.
Yeah, that's going to kind of do it for just our portal talk. That's 25 plus minutes of just kind of rambling about these guys and some of those key departures. But there'll be more guys to talk about on Monday. But before we do that, we're going to do like a new segment. Just Payton and I for this one. Jack will, if you haven't noticed, he isn't here right now, but we'll have Jack back to do this next week too, if anyone wants to submit them. But we're doing kind of a readers Q&A. We don't really have a name for it right now, but if you're interested, you want to send in a question to take before the Friday show, just drop it in the YouTube or email us at the unwrittenrulepod@gmail.com. Just let us know something you're thinking about portal season, something about basketball, even if it's something football related. Spring ball just ended. The guys are on spring break this week. They'll get back to practice soon. If you have anything you want to talk about, just submit it out there. And this first one comes from a guy who's been pretty active in our comment section. I've enjoyed it too. A lot of positive, just replies to just on how things are going. But he goes by Sam MIZ Sports, Payton. I've sent you a couple of his replies before, but he sent us an email. He was kind of the one I got this idea from. And then the second person as well that kind of sparked the idea for me a couple months ago. But we'll read Sam's first, and then we'll get to the other reply. But it's a good email, Payton. Hello, gentlemen. This is Sam, aka at Sam MIZ Sports on YouTube. With the men's basketball season having come to a close, it's time to start looking at the next batch of players we can sign to help out the 2025-2026 season. My personal starts with number 1. We need to find a player or 2 to replace Tamar Bates and Caleb Grill's leadership. Secondly, we need to get a big man who is very adept in their college career at operating with their back to the basket, something we brought up earlier. I know in the Dennis Gates ball screen offense, a lot of times the big man is up top QBing, but after the loss to Drake, you have to think Dennis is going to update some sets on the big man that the big man is established down low more early and often. As far as names to watch, I'll give an early list here. BJ Freeman from Arizona State, Dr. Bradley from UAPB, Deshaun Jackson from Iowa State, and Corey Chest from LSU, and lastly, Bryce Lindsey from James Madison. Thanks, Sam. Payton, we'll start there just with the leadership one. I think that is a big one, maybe one that some people aren't talking about. I mean, in your own personal opinion, kind of watching this team develop, I think I have a guy that kind of jumps off the page as maybe that next leader on the offense, or just controlling the ball, is probably Anthony Robinson. But in your eyes, I mean, who else could probably step up with that leadership?
I mean, definitely Ant is the one. For me, he's very almost too hyper at times out there. You can tell he's very intense. If someone's going to straight up take the Tamar Bates leadership mantle, which I think Tamar Bates was easily the big leader, I think it'd probably be Ant. I can definitely see him taking that role. Maybe, I don't know that I'd say Mark Mitchell. Mark Mitchell kind of seems more quiet than the rest of them. So I can't really positively say who, like, on the roster. I don't think it would be Trent Pierce. Trent Pierce definitely seems more quiet.
Yeah.
Maybe Jacob Cruz.
I was thinking that. I was thinking he is kind of a vocal guy when you see him on the court.
It'd be
very
nice if he could do something for the team like
Mhm.
that, considering I don't trust much else he does. I don't know that I'd say you have to look into the portal to get something like that. That you do need to get guys that play at least somewhat similar to Bates and Grill. And obviously, it's not an unpopular opinion to say, oh, they should go get a 50, 40, 90 shooter out of the portal, and a guy that was probably the hottest shooter in college basketball until the last few weeks. But they do just need like scorers. I still think that's more essential to this team than a straight up big man. It's just guys that can score. We kind of touched on the big man thing already. I think they're probably going to still get more of a skilled big than just a straight up back to the basket guy. I think Nick Pringle is perfect for that. I think Nick Davidson could do that. There's going to probably be other big men that pop up in the portal. It'd be nice if they could finally just put the big man thing that they've been hunting to rest for good and just get a guy that does it all. But those guys are not in the portal often, and they cost an obscene amount of money. So that's kind of what is preventing them from that. I kind of like some of those names. I did not know Corey Chest was in the portal from LSU. He would be a legit. And I don't know if he's a straight back to the basket guy, but I do know that he pulls in quite a bit of boards. So that'd be an interesting one. I kind of did not know he was in the portal. I'd have to look into that more.
Yeah, Sam knows his stuff. That's a good list too, of names probably just to put out there. We haven't seen any like linkage of these, within those lists that you're seeing on the social media from agents and just players actually reaching out to people too. But it's BJ Freeman, Arizona State, Dr. Bradley, awesome name, UAPB, Deshaun Jackson, Iowa State, Corey Chest, LSU, and Bryce Lindsey of James Madison was the ones on Sam's list. Peyton Marshall. Maybe a guy that can be that leadership too. Peyton.
Yeah, I do remember. Like Dennis said that he was the one after what game was it?
It was the Texas
A&M.
game.
Was it Texas?
Texas game locker room. Yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't even play in that one. So, just looking at Corey Chest, by the way, he's 6'8", so he wouldn't be the straight up like you can't probably have him go in and be the straight up guy that would be like a back to the basket type guy. I think he'd probably have to be a little more versatile. Just because I don't think that's the height you can do for that. But man, the rebound rates are absurd with this guy. The assist and turnover numbers aren't great, but man, if I would be interested in Corey Chest just on the rebound and block rates alone. But again, I don't think he's kind of what the staff is going to look at too closely.
All right, second question, last one. And again, if you want to, submit anything and want a subject we talk about, just basketball or football primarily. If you have any other sports, maybe we'll try to jump into that. But right now, just send any football, basketball questions you want us to talk about. This one comes from Mama Bear, Mizzou Kid's mom. She's been kind of a big listener of us for a couple of years now since we moved over to a podcast format. But she said, who do you think the staff is currently prioritizing in that 2026 class? We do talk about the transfer portal, but high school still kind of is a big deal for just maybe some high major teams, and definitely for Mizzou kind of getting in that 2 to 3, 2 to 4 range of classes, signing 4 guys the year before, 2 guys this past year. So I got a quick list. This answer is just kind of for me, Peyton, and you can throw in any questions.
Yeah, I think you're the one that would be well suited for this.
So yeah, throw in anything else if you have anything for it. But these are kind of like the big 4 right now, just in that 2026 class. JJ Andrews, Aiden Chronister, Tristan Reed, and Ethan Taylor. JJ Andrews is the only one that's taken an official visit. He kind of got his OVs out of the way early. He did his in September. That's a kind of an early time to get that done, but he took a handful of them. He is from Little Rock area, so he knows Ann Arbor Boateng well. He knows this team well. So you're kind of battling Arkansas for him, battling some other big schools in the region, little team maybe up north too, and like Marquette and some other schools that are looking at him. But he's a top guard option for the Tigers. Another Arkansas guy, Aiden Chronister, who's playing in Kansas now at Sunrise Christian Academy, but he's an Arkansas legacy. His mom played volleyball for the Razorbacks, so there is a connection there. But Dennis Gates is involved here. They went to go see him practice a couple times before the season, and Mizzou really likes him, and just what kind of the length that he brings to maybe that wing forward position, maybe even bring the being one of those guard spots. Tristan Reed, that's a name people should know. He's the younger brother of Terrace Reed Jr., who played at UConn this past year, was at Michigan, so. He is there is that relationship there, but he's at John Burroughs in the St. Louis area, plays for MoKan. So a lot of overlap with guys in the state of Missouri. He knows Aaron Rowe well from playing with him at MoKan. 4-star, forward position. He worked a lot on his confidence this past year. When you talk to him, he's like the nicest kid in the world, just very soft spoken, but a nice force in the paint. Ethan Taylor is an interesting one. He's 7'1", 245 pounds. He's a big time center. He's been known for his defense. He's been a defensive wizard prowess just because of how much bigger he is than everyone, but really working on that offensive side of the game this past year. And he won a state title in the state of Kansas. So he is definitely going to be a big man that Mizzou likes. And his last 2 visits, Payton, were both Kansas losses. One was to Texas Tech, and the other one was the border war for Mizzou. So he was excited to be a part of that. So those are kind of the 4 big ones. Sheik Pearson is another name. He's teammates with Tristan Reed at John Burroughs in St. Louis, but that one's kind of slowed off a little bit. Iowa State is involved there. Sheik is from Iowa originally. He moved to St. Louis for high school. So, Iowa State has been big. Marquette's been big. Those are 2 schools that brought him on for OVs, but I think he's more on the outside looking in right now of that big 4.
I think it's interesting also. I just realized this. It's funny we talked about Marcus Adams Jr. because his brother, his younger brother, Maximo Adams, is a 2026 guy, and Mizzou has offered him. So that could be something to keep an eye on, I guess. But the only one of those I know obviously you're the one that would know the most about it, Kenny. The only one of those I really remember more about is Crostener, because I think we've talked about him before. That kind of feels like with Cal at Arkansas and everything, like if he gets that offer, it's probably going to be tough to beat, right?
Yeah, I think so. I just think, with what Cal did this year, and first of all, it's Calipari name. Like that is a big selling point to begin with. Arkansas basketball is in the Sweet 16 right now. It has an opportunity to go to the Elite Eight. They played well against St. John's, a team that, lost less than 5 games on the year during the regular season. So it is kind of a hard thing to beat now, just with kind of the upswing that you might see from Arkansas and recruiting, just under Calipari, just the shift in tone of the Razorbacks look. And, his mom didn't play basketball, but he's still an Arkansas legacy. There still is something there. I believe his brother plays baseball at Xavier, if I'm not mistaken. So they're not afraid to branch out. But Dennis Gates heavily involved there. He's mentioned before. Dennis came to some of his practices, and he was at the border war game, which was a big game just for a lot of recruits to get on campus. So I just think those are the 4 names just right now. And thanks to Mama Bear for asking that question. Okay. Well, that's just going to do it for our basketball segment. 37 minutes of just rambling on there, but we'll close the show here with quick hits. All right. Quick hits time. Jersey of the week. My jersey of the week goes to Yaya Keita, former Missouri bench guy for 1 season under Conzo Martin, hit the transfer portal amid the coaching change when Dennis Gates came in, played the last 2 years for OU, but going to be a grad transfer now. Actually, last 3 years at Oklahoma.
Yeah, last 3.
Wow, that's weird to think. It's been a long time since Yaya Keita was on the Mizzou team. If I'm mistaken, he is originally from Africa, correct? And he moved to St. Louis because I think, or maybe his family is, because I think there was some kind of like stories behind that, some ties of his lineages. Right. But yeah, I think he was a St. Louis product out of high school. But Yaya Keita in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, I believe you're correct about all that. It's really weird because he was at Oklahoma the last 3 years, and he played way more games for Missouri than he did in his 3
Mhm.
years at Oklahoma, which is, you could ask me, you could ask Kenny and I anything you want about that 21-22 team. We'll be able to rattle off the answers. That team is a deep, that's a treasure trove in my brain. So good luck to Yaya.
Yeah, he is originally from Mali. It's a country in Africa. I don't know it. I probably heard it before, but that's where he's originally from. But he played at Smet, so I knew he was a St. Louis high school product. But he's originally from Mali in Africa.
He wasn't also the only Oklahoma big man with Missouri ties to enter. Luke Northweather entered the portal. He was another big man for Oklahoma. Very interesting recruitment, if I remember it correctly. He had kind of like a shotgun crash course recruitment. Got an offer from Oklahoma. Got an offer, like another offer, really quickly from Missouri. He's from Jeff City originally, I believe, and then a week later committed to Oklahoma. So definitely maybe someone to keep an eye on. I wouldn't imagine he's Missouri's first choice, but just an interesting little tidbit I saw there.
I think too with those ones, those kind of moves too. Like everyone wants to know, like what's the connection to Missouri? You know, once you guys hit the portal, I think that will start to trim down and die down a little bit. Like that philosophy, just with the rosters being smaller. You know, you originally you can make the rosters how big you want it to, especially with NIL. But with only 15 guys, I think sometimes we don't always want to look at, you know, are they from Missouri? You know, because that was kind of a big thing these last couple of years. Payton, jersey of the week.
Yeah, my jersey of the week is going to be opening day. Any baseball player you want. I'll just pick one out of the blue here. I'll go Joey Loperfido from the Toronto Blue Jays. No reason
Not
in
in the major
particular.
leagues.
Really? He's
starting in AAA.
Okay, well, let's just go with is Wagner on the
Yes.
Okay, Wagner for the Blue Jays. Max Wagner.
Not his name.
What's his first name?
Will Wagner.
Will Wagner. That's
It's going great, Peyton.
The son of Bobby Wagner. Will
Billy
Wagner.
Wagner. Oh man.
Cut all of this out, Jackson Knowlton. Wow, that really threw me for a loop when you said Loperfido was in the minors. I had that planned out all day.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
Altuve made a catch in left field. Right here. This guy right here. Jose Altuve just made a big catch over Jake Myers, over the center fielder.
Wow, he called off the center fielder.
He didn't call it off. They almost ran into each other.
Oh, even better.
Yep.
Yeah, Kyle Tucker. There he is, bottom right, Kenny, in a Cubs jersey. By the way, it's opening day in baseball. Let's just wrap up this disaster part of the segment with a World Series prediction from you, Kenny.
I mean, I'm just gonna go easy. The best team in the world got even better somehow on all facets of the game. I think it's a repeat, first time since the 90s. Go Dodgers.
You're going Dodgers. I'm going to go the Dodgers as well. I will throw one kind of hot take in. I think the Royals win the AL Central, and I do think they also will be have the second best record in the American League.
I think they're an ALCS team. I called it 2 years ago when Will Smith signed there. I was early. A little early. Jack's jersey of the week. We talked about Aiden Shaw earlier, but this was a very nice reply from Aiden Shaw. He's now the Freddie Fermin supporter. So he's a Royals fan. Freddie Fermin's a backup catcher behind Salvador Perez, but he was Aiden Shaw enjoyer for a little bit. And Matt Zoller's season replied, "Can we expect a rebrand?" Now Freddie Freeman supporter said, "I don't even know what to do anymore." Aiden Shaw replied, "Thank you for being a fan." Very nice reply. Also could be the ratio of the week if you're looking for that, 46-1. But nice little jersey from Aiden Shaw. There he is.
Yeah. I'm glad Aiden Shaw felt the love. I don't think anybody has any ill will towards Aiden Shaw. Just a shame it didn't turn into something a little more.
All right. What's that segment?
I like No Cap, and he's the main bird.
This is going great, man.
I thought that was a good a good segue. I wasn't even trying to be mess up. I was just saying, I was letting Shawnee say it, but I'm kind of all in control right now. Shawnee's main bird of the week. My Shawnee's main bird of the week. This is the wrong link. So Mizzou Gymnastics. Man, seriously, this is what happens when Jack isn't here. But Mizzou Gymnastics earned the is a 2 seed in the NCAA Seattle Regional. My connection to a bird, Auburn, is in this. They've War Eagles, so I know it's a very bad one. I was kind of last second. I really couldn't find a bird this week.
That's a good one. I've used it.
Yeah, I think we've all used it. We've used Tiger in the Wild with Auburn too, because go Auburn. But Mizzou Gymnastics will travel to Seattle as the 2 seed for its NCAA regional meets, competing against number 10 Georgia, the 3 seed, and number 21 Arizona, number 26 Arizona State on Friday, April 4th. So that's next week at the Alaska Airlines Arena. So something to keep an eye out for. Just if you're looking for some Mizzou action next week, don't want to watch the Final Four, or the news leading up to the Final Four, this is what you got to watch.
Yes, and also shout out to Shannon Welker for being SEC Coach of the Year and Helen Hu for winning Specialist of the Year. So,
well, way to ruin one of Jack's quick hits.
Why in the world did you split them up? It's the same thing. Come on.
Your main bird of the week.
My main bird is going to be Robin Pinchton. If you're looking for the bird connection, she used to coach at Illinois State. They're the Redbirds. In one of the most jaw-dropping hires I've ever seen, Robin Pinchton was hired as the new women's head basketball coach at Wisconsin. This came out of absolutely nowhere. I think everyone almost assumed Pinchton was, at the very least, taking a year or two off from coaching. I certainly did not expect her to get a Big Ten job. Look, Wisconsin historically has not been a fantastic program. I don't even believe in women's basketball they've made the Sweet 16. They're kind of looking for a stabilizing force. Pinchton can't give them that, but I mean, good for Robin Pinchton, first of all. I don't think anyone has any real ill will towards her. She seems like a very good person, all things considered. I had no issues when I covered the team with Robin Pinchton whatsoever. I think it's a very, very surprising hire for a high major team. Something that I was not expecting to see was Robin Pinchton coaching at all this year, let alone at a high major like Wisconsin.
Where did you expect her to be this year? I mean, can you kind of just pinpoint a team or like a type of team that you maybe thought she'd be an assistant for?
Legitimately, I thought she was not going to coach this year. I would have guessed that she took a year off of coaching, kind of like a lot of coaches at her stage do. Very good for her. I mean, great. That's great. She gets to go up to the Big Ten and kind of maybe her style of play will kind of fit there more, but the Big Ten is real damn good at basketball as well. So she's, again, facing an uphill battle there, especially because Wisconsin has historically not been great at women's basketball. But good luck to her. Good for her. Just very surprised to see something like this.
The one time Jack isn't here, well, he's not here very often, but we do talk about Wisconsin. He's not even here. He's not going to hear this part. He doesn't listen to the show, so we can say whatever we want.
He'll hopefully have to probably listen back to part of this segment when he's editing it. That's for sure.
Yeah, they won't hear this part. So glad we got to talk about your Wisconsin Badgers while you weren't here, Jack. Speaking of Wisconsin Badgers, JJ Watt is now going to be on CBS broadcasting NFL games, and the Bird Connection is kind of a fun one. This one is coming from Jack and Quick Hits. Ian Eagle. This was a text exchange JJ Watt posted to X, the Everything app. I'll read his text first. Looks like the news is out, partner. Can't wait to get back in the stadiums and call games with one of the best in the business. Ian Eagle replied, going to be a blast. Can't wait to get started. Eagle emoji. Preparation starts today, says JJ Watt with a photo of his JJ Watt branded ice bath. Ian Eagle replied, why would you need a cold tub and sauna to prepare for commentating? Eagle emoji. So I guess Ian Eagle is just going to always put an eagle out there. He replied with with bananas and then Saratoga water, which is a trend right now for those that don't know. I know Peyton's grandma. It'd be very hard to explain it to you, ma'am. Like it is just
grandma. We don't have enough time in the day to explain this joke.
And it'll be gone soon. Like we won't matter anymore. But it's the morning routine. It is a trend right now on social media. But just kind of funny that Ian Eagle replies with every text with an eagle emoji.
Yeah. Well, so Kenny, you could start doing this. You could do a van and then a door.
And then I'm never going to do that.
Why not?
What would be the N? Like just the letter N?
The letter N. Just right after a door. I can't do it. Haverman would probably not work well.
There's a man emoji. Her.
There is a man emoji,
Have
but what
her,
can I
man.
use for have?
I don't know. I guess you'd have to write it out. Yeah, it's a tough one. But Eagle's a good last name. Shout out JJ Watt.
Perfect for that.
Texans
Our
legend.
good friend Peter Camp has also done it, just with a tent, because it's a camp. All right, best thing I learned this week. We're jumping right back into Mizzou women's basketball. They made a couple of hires for the coaching staff. One was Jennifer Sullivan, who was actually at the time she was hired was the sitting head coach for Florida Atlantic. Wasn't going super well there. Florida Atlantic is a very, very tough job there, as Kenny goes to get his lovely FAU shirt, I'm assuming. But still, the optics of even going to get a Florida, like just a sitting head coach from Florida Atlantic is pretty good. I think that's a good one. Jennifer Sullivan has also worked with Kelly Harper in the past. So very natural hire for her to make. Another I can't talk. Sorry. Another hire that was made was Kenzie Costas. She's also joining Kelly Harper's staff. She's a Missouri native. She played at Missouri State. She was on coaching staffs in Central Missouri, in Missouri State, and also at Florida Atlantic. So there's Kenny's Florida Atlantic hat if you're watching on the YouTube. So just a couple of hires there. I believe both have been on Kelly Harper's staff. I'd have to double check on Kenzie Costas. I know Jennifer Sullivan has, but Kenzie Costas is at the very least familiar with the area. So yeah, I mean, Kelly Harper kind of getting her staff in order here. Gonna probably have to hit the ground running in the portal soon after. A couple of Missouri players have already hit it. We'll talk more about that next week. But yeah, just a couple of hires already for Kelly Harper. We'll see how the rest of the staff shapes up.
Do you think Kim Mulkey knows about Skim Milky?
No, I don't. In the
Zero
same way, I
chance.
don't think Billy Donovan knows about Trilly Donovan.
I really think Kim Mulkey's son probably told her. He seems like he's like.
You think?
I think he's probably 4 years older than us. He played baseball at LSU, if I'm not mistaken. So he probably is on social media. He probably is in that era that might be burnerverse. I don't know. But maybe this is his mom. Maybe his mom just has a take for media. Don't watch your press conferences because that would kind of go against what I just said. Best thing I learned this week, Kurt Lewis has entered the transfer portal. That's not the best thing. That's not the best thing about this. The Field of 68 reported this, that Kurt Lewis entered the transfer portal. He told Sean Paul of the Field of 68. Sorry, reading the name Sean Paul and not thinking it's not the celebrity is weird to me. But he has 2 years of eligibility remaining. That's crazy. I would never expect a Kurt Lewis, who I believe someone told me is turning 25 soon, has 2 years of eligibility remaining because of a medical red shirt, and he has an extra year because of JUCO.
Yeah, Missouri site says he was born May 19th, 1999. That means he is going to be 26 by the time that's absurd, and he has 2 years of college left.
He could be 27 by the time he's done playing college basketball.
Don't let the world find out about Kurt Lewis and his age, but he's the exact guy people make fun of when it comes to way too long, like being in college way too long.
Yeah.
But good luck to him. I mean, former Tiger, it didn't work out here, but
transfer portal's maybe a good thing sometimes. You just never know. He played at East Tennessee. That's where he went after his time with Mizzou. Well, Payton already mentioned it. He kind of ruined it.
Split this up for some reason.
Yeah, Jack needed a quick hit, and Payton just talked about it. But Shannon Welker,
I gave him a perfectly adequate quick hit that he could have used.
Shannon Welker earned SEC Coach of the Year, and Helen Hu won Specialist of the Year. Just 2 awards handed out to in the SEC to 2 Mizzou Tigers, and also Amari Celestine, Jocelyn Moore, Mara Tatar Solizliv. Okay, and Helen Hu were all named All SEC team.
Yeah, Helen Hu in particular, I don't think is a surprise. She had a great story this year in general. I also believe she won Specialist of the Week like 100 times this year. Like legitimately if we ever needed a quick hit, we could have used that every single week. She was excellent. It was probably Mizzou's best year in the SEC ever, so no surprise Shannon Welker gets that nod. Probably becoming maybe the most consistent program at Mizzou, besides maybe wrestling, has always been good. I know they weren't great this year, but has definitely become a massive standard to uphold in the gymnastics program.
I'm calling it now. In 3 years, there'll be a September game, Mizzou against possibly FAU in like 2029. And I feel like Helen Hu will be banging Big Mo. I think she made that lasting of an impact on Mizzou athletics, especially like a sport that's, non-revenue, not saying that in a bad way, but a sport that doesn't have as much spotlight on it. And she brought a lot of spotlight to Mizzou gymnastics, and that's as a whole. But when you think of the name over the last couple of years, someone who's kind of a staple within that program, it definitely is Helen Hu. So you have to give her credit for that. And I think in a couple of years from now, she'll be back at Mizzou, and I think it'll be a name that a lot of people are excited about. Payton, before we close things out, you got a joke?
I sure do, Kenny. This one comes from our favorite TV series, the Today Show. Kenny, why did the duck fall on the sidewalk?
I don't know. I was trying to think of something quack related or.
Oh, you're on. You got it. You're on it.
There was a quack in the sidewalk.
You're pretty close. He
tripped over a quack. Yeah,
he tripped.
That's good. I like that. That's a good one. Well, that's going to do it for today's or Friday's edition of the Unwritten Rule. We'll be back on Monday. It's just going to be Payton and I on that one, as well as Jack is covering the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16, possibly the Elite Eight for Alabama rivals. So we'll see him next time, and we will see you next time on the Unwritten Rule. Have a great weekend.